Welcome to Australia's Crown Melbourne, where the world's top poker players have gathered to play in the Southern Hemisphere's premier poker tournament. FullTiltPoker.net presents the Aussie Millions. Tonight, the chips will be flying when a table full of superstars takes center stage, but there won't be a trophy or a check when these guys are done. Tonight, you get to keep what you win. Hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake in the exclusive high-stakes cash game.
It's a little easier to see what you're in for in an actual cash game because a dollar is a dollar.
Since I've never played games this high before, I'm going to win or lose more money than I've ever won or lost in a cash game.
Who knows what's going to happen? You know, things could blow out of proportions. I think there'll be some serious damage.
Poker's biggest names are about to mix it up with a fortune at stake. FullTiltPoker.net presents the Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Welcome to Melbourne, Australia, and the Crown Melbourne, home of the 2008 Aussie Millions. Just about to get underway, and we've got a table full of some of poker's biggest names playing for cold, hard cash. Hi again, everybody. Barry Tompkins alongside the professor of poker, Howard Lederer. And Howard, let's meet the players.
Well, Barry, there's a good look at Patrick Antonius, last year's big winner in this cash game. He's one of Europe's best young players.
Nicky Jedlicka, a young pro from Austria and one of the game's hot up-and-coming talents.
Well, in C3, we've got Masa Kagawa, an amateur from Japan. He was a surprise winner in last year's game.
Tony G, the Australians in Seat 4, 2005 European Poker Champ.
Well, there's the iconic Chris Ferguson, 2000 WSOP main event champion, 5-time bracelet winner, but not an experienced cash game player.
And then there's our returning champion from last year's Aussie Millions main event, Gus Hansen.
And there's John Juanda, 3 WSOP bracelets to his name. He also won the Speed Poker Championship here in 2006.
And Seat 8 is Eli Elezra, the multi-million-dollar Vegas businessman who plays in some of the biggest games in the world. Here are the rules for tonight's game. The game is no-limit Texas Hold'em. Players can buy in for any amount and come and go as they please. And every chip represents an actual Australian dollar amount, currently worth about 90 cents to the U.S. dollar. Well, the cards are out. Action has begun. The blinds, 400 and 800 with a $100 ante.
Yeah, and everyone has bought in for a minimum of $100,000 tonight.
John Juanda, ace-queen suited.
He opens the pot for $2,500 with a solid hand, ace-queen suited up front.
February is very cold.
Action now folds to Tony G. He folds, as does Chris Ferguson.
Yeah, end of March.
Gus Hansen is in the blinds. And it looks like he's going to certainly defend the blinds here with a solid hand like King Jack. And he's called.
So, 2 players. We'll see our first flop of the night. King 10-8, 3 more spades.
Yes, John Juanda has flopped the absolute nuts. Hansen has flopped top pair. This can't be good for Gus. And typically he leads. No, he checks here. And Juanda's going to slow play the pot.
And another spade, a deuce of spades on the turn.
Well, that's a great card for Hansen. If it had come a non-spade, he probably would lose more on this hand. He's going to lead out.
2,500 the bet.
See where he's at. He probably thinks that his hand is good. He just wants to pick up this pot, prevent another spade from hitting, but of course he's run into the nuts. Juanda just calls here, but this will put a screeching halt to Hansen.
On the river, the queen of clubs.
I'd expect Gus to check and fold. After he gets called on the turn, he has to assume that Juanda has a flush. And he does check.
Juanda bets 4,000.
Well, Gus is probably going to throw his hand away, I'd expect. But Gus doesn't do anything too quickly at the table.
Nor too predictably.
No. Wow, he calls. Pays this off.
I almost had that beat.
Well, first hand of the day, not wanting to get run over.
$19,200 in that pot.
Great start for Juanda.
Well, as you mentioned, they're playing for actual cash tonight. Chip values ranging between $100 and $5,000. And when you see those white tiles, someone has just bet $25,000.
Well, and all our players will be trying to collect plenty of those tonight. We already have our first live straddle in hand number 2. Gus Hansen, first position, makes it 1,600 blind, which means he can raise if it comes limped around to him.
John Juanda folds, and Elezra is going to call with a queen deuce.
Well, Ellie's famous for playing a lot of hands in this deep stack style of poker. This isn't like tournament poker. You can reap some large rewards if you catch a tricky flop with a hand like Queen Deuce. This isn't the kind of hand I'd play.
66.
But certainly, if you're going to play a hand like that, doing it in a cash game is the place to do it.
Jedlicka is going to raise it to 6,600.
Well, the way you punish plays like limping in with the Queen Deuce is to raise with a marginal but likely good hand like Ace-9. You need to make Ellie pay to try and draw out against you. So now it's 5,000 more to Gus, and he does have a Gussy kind of hand, 6-4 suited, another tricky hand.
Not this time.
Ellie calls 5,000 more. Certainly hoping to catch a tricky flop, but paying a big price to do it. 6,600 he's already in this pot.
Two players now to the flop. Ace-10 deuce, and Jedlicka's caught top pair.
You check dark?
Well, certainly that's a great flop for Nicky. He's flopped top pair, and Ellie has actually flopped a pair.
10,000.
Wow, he calls. This is an unusual play. I would have expected Ellie to either fold or raise.
Ace of diamonds on the turn.
Ellie checks. He's certainly swimming upstream here and in big trouble, drawing completely dead. Nicky slow plays.
And a queen of clubs on the river.
Well, now Ellie may feel like he just drew out against 2 jacks or a 10. He bets a defensive 10,000. Certainly Nicky's going to call and pick up this nice pot.
And a good pot it is. 56,800 in that pot.
Well, when you play hands like Queen Deuce, you have to be able to deal with the emotions of just realizing you just fired off over 20,000 with a hand that most people wouldn't have played.
Well, young Nicky Jedlicka happy that he did that.
It's going to be a long day today.
Come on, Ellie, we're just getting started. More from the Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational when we come back.
We play for big pots, small stakes, and the chance to say, read 'em and weep. For the weekends, the all-nighters, and the lunch hour. We play for the legends and for the unknowns who dream of winning it all. For the bad beats and the pocket kings we sometimes have the sense to fold. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
Welcome back to Australia and the beautiful Crown Melbourne, site of the 2008 Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational.
A great cash game player?
To be a great cash game player, you need very good bankroll management skills. Discipline.
You know, it's called tuition, one hand or one chip that you're throwing in.
You have to be able to handle a lot of pressure. There's always action in the cash game where it's a little more slow developing in the tournament.
For me, it's not about the money. It's about challenging myself against the best in the world.
There's about $1.1 million on the table right now, and a really interesting mix of players trying to get as much of that cash as they possibly can. I'm Barry Tompkins, along with my partner Howard Lederer. Howard, normally we see tournament play on television. This is a cash game. Very different animal.
Absolutely. When we talk about the best tournament players and the best cash game players, very often our lists are very different. Tournament players, they're rewarded for hyper-aggressive play against very weak players, whereas cash game players really have to develop patience. They have to build a game that can beat the other best players in the world who are playing in those cash games with them.
Well, let's get back to the action. The blind still 400 and 800 with a $100 ante.
Did you what?
Action folding over to Elia Lesra, who will raise it up to 1,600.
Well, he's continuing his aggressive play with less than stellar cards. Patrick, another player, is willing to get his chips in there with marginal hands. 5-4 suited, calling the small raise from Lesra.
Action folding now to Chris Ferguson.
Well, he's going to toss that King-7 offsuit. Hansen with a nice, moderately strong hand. He's certainly going to at least call with this pair of eights. And yes, he just does call. 3 to the flop. Hansen in great shape here. More than 50-50 to win this pot, three-handed.
And here is the flop, 10-9-3. And Lesra has drawn out, pairing his 9.
Well, not the flop Gus was looking for, and he checks. And we're all checked around.
So the turn is a 4 of clubs.
Well, Gus is going to fire with his 8s. He probably thinks he has the best hand here.
Hansen bet 3,300.
Alezra almost calls, but now he raises 5,000. That was kind of a balk. In baseball, we'd be advancing the runner.
So it was 8,300 to Antonius, who folded.
Instead, in poker, I think Hansen will be advancing his cards into the muck.
You're the only one can always look at my card. What's that? I don't let John know.
So Ellie takes a nice $17,000 pot, just a pittance, though, to these guys. With so much cash on the table, we thought we'd ask the question, what's the most money you've ever won in a single cash game?
Good question. I think maybe 120,000.
I think I won about 100,000 last time I played. I've won 80 before.
It's the biggest win I ever made. It was in 2-4,000 game right after I got done shooting high stakes poker. I won 287,000 in 4 hours.
The biggest I ever win in 1 section in cash game is 200 big bet.
My biggest win was over $1.6 million.
I think my lawyer told me not to say.
Well, towards the end of last year, I won $5 million in one night, which is pretty good. Feels very nice, obviously.
I think 70,000. I remember that very easily because the losses hurt so much more.
I lost 182,000 playing live, playing 3 days straight.
You know, I lost in my life several times over 500,000. I lost, the biggest loss I have is over $1 million 60.
And the biggest losing day I had 1.2 million. And that was took almost 2 days basically playing straight.
You go home and you talk to yourself. You talk to yourself on the mirror or the car. Why did I do it, you know?
Of course you feel like after losing.
Obviously, you're going to have big winning days, you're going to have big losing days. And as long as there's more pluses than minuses and at the bottom line, I think I'll be okay.
I would imagine, Howard, the best thing in poker is just to forget.
You have to move on from your big losses, and you have to move on from your big wins. Poker's about keeping an even keel and just playing well day in, day out.
I'm losing. I'm playing tight. I'm waiting for my rush.
Well, Alezra has straddled here, so first action to Antonius.
Right, and again, that means that Alezra's put double the big blind in, 1,600 blind, but he is live.
Antonius folds, now Jedlicka.
56.
We'll make it 5,600 to go.
Solid hand, 2 10s.
Fold around now to Chris Ferguson. He folds. Hansen will fold. And Jawanda.
Wow.
Ooh.
That's the kind of hand you want when you put the live straddle on it. He's grabbed 4 $5,000 chips. He makes a 21-6. It's going to be tough for Jedlicka to lay this down. He's seen Ellie play so many hands.
And he does make the call, so 2 players to the flop.
Of course, this is the spot where if he does catch a 10, he is going to bust Alezra.
Ace, 8-5, all spades.
Great flop for Jedlicka. He's up to 42% in this hand. This is going to kill the action. He's not going to face a big bet. It goes check, check.
And a 9 of clubs on the turn. No help.
15.
Ellie is going to defend his hand. He bets a third of the pot, 15,000. Just hoping that Jedlicka is going to go away here. But again, Nicky has seen Alezra play so many hands with not the best of cards. Maybe tough for him to get away. He's getting over 4-1. He does call 15,000 more on the turn.
3 of clubs on the river.
No help. He needed a spade or a 10.
And Alezra, counting it out again, puts another 15,000 in.
Well, that's an awfully sneaky bet. You can see Jedlicka giggling here. It's awfully hard to lay it down, getting such a big price here. 6-1. And he's got 2 10s. So Alezra either has to have a flush or an ace. He knows Ellie's capable of anything here.
Whatever.
King.
Yeah, he pays it off.
And with that, Alezra will take down 105,100, the biggest pot of the day.
Lovely flop.
Alezra being sarcastic there. 3 babies on the flop, and he might have doubled up.
See what's happened when you straddle? You get the king in the hand, right?
Well, Ellie Lesra getting a little revenge on young Nicky Jedlicka. More from the Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational when we come back. Game Invitational. Well, this week began with the pros and the online qualifiers being treated to an entertaining, welcoming party here at the Crown Melbourne, where everyone got a taste of local flavor and the Australian wildlife.
What's his name?
Tiger.
Tiger. Hello, Tiger. He's hanging out with Mikey. He knows where all the cool people are. You notice he's not hanging out with nobody else but me.
Must be the lettuce he has under his shirt.
Either that or that lizard recognizes a soft game when he sees one.
Well, no soft game for Ellie Lesra. He and John Jawanda, the only two players in the black. Last year's winner, Patrick Antonius, as you see, bringing up the rear right now.
Well, certainly not a lot of blood has been spilt yet.
Action will start on Tony G this hand. Kagawa is straddling. Action folding around to Ellie Lesra. Queen deuce, and he'll raise to 4,200.
Well, he is making a button raise, trying to isolate against the amateur Kagawa. He has position, but not much of a hand. Queen deuce offsuit.
Kagawa jack 8.
Well, he's probably going to call. Just defending against the button raise.
Yes. 42.
He does.
He does call. Lesra actually finds himself in position with the best hand. Not that the queen deuce will play very well after the flop, but being in position is going to help him.
So 2 to the flop, 10, 8, 5 on the flop, 2 spades. Kagawa with middle pair.
We'd expect Kagawa to check. He does check, and we would expect Lesra to try and pick this pot up.
And he will bet 4,400.
Well, we know Massa is going to at least call. Might want to raise here to find out where he's at. Well, he's counting out the call. No, it looks like he's just going to call. Well, Lesra's in big trouble. He needs a queen here.
And he gets a king.
Not the best card, but it's a check to him.
Those haven't changed.
Wow, he's reaching for a sizable bet.
11,000. Flat out bluff.
Well, he's using his position and his aggression to his advantage. Yes, and he's just picked up a pot there. It was the 2-bullet bluff. The first one didn't work. If Kagawa had raised on the flop, I suspect he would have won that pot, but instead he just called and allowed Lesra's aggression to pick up that pot.
Of 19,200.
Those are the kinds of hands you have to win to beat the cash games.
Well, Tony G on a straddle this time, and the action folding around to John Jawanda. He calls with pocket nines.
Jawanda just calling with 2 nines. Lesra making a rare fold.
Antonius, 8-5 suited, and he calls.
Patrick willing to play a lot of hands.
One flop.
Jedlicka called with his jack 7 suited, and now Tony G. And he checks.
Tony G could have made an aggressive play there, made a big raise.
So 4 players to the flop. Ace, jack, deuce.
Tony G's caught top pair with a solid kicker. Jedlicka flops second pair. It's on him.
He checks.
I check.
And so does Tony G.
Tony G probably looking for a check raise here. Jawanda wisely checks his nines. Tonius completely whiffs and fires 4,000 at this pot. Well, Jedlicka out of position with 2 people behind him. It's be tough to call. Second pair only. But he does call. Well, this is exactly what Tony G wanted. A bet and a call. He makes it 20,000. Well, this ought to end things right here. I can't see either of these 2 players calling.
Antonius folds the tent, and so does Jedlicka.
Nice bluff. Huh?
That was no bluff, Nicky.
Well, I'm not going to just like... I got to win one pot.
You have 10-8 a club. Good raise.
You could get trapped thinking that. You will get trapped. Just a matter when.
Welcome back to Australia and the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. All play continues. The blinds remain 400 and 800 with a $100 ante.
Well, that may be the structure, but we have seen a lot of players straddling, and once again, we have Eli Lesser straddling for 1,600.
And Jedlicka will make the call with a Jack-7. Kagawa folds to Tony G. And he will call.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of big matchup hands, but certainly plenty of players willing to call with less than stellar holdings. Gus limps with 4 high, and Jawanda also calls with Jack-8 of spades.
Action now over to our straddler. Ace-9 for Ellie.
It's a 15,000 hand. Hold on, let me think, okay?
Do it, just for the heck of it, just to prove.
3, 4, 5, 6.
Make it 20. Oh, 15 does give us the right odds this time.
Alright, that's fine.
Ah.
Well, Alezer was thinking about whether he should try and pick that one up. He actually had the best hand. He could have stolen that pot with a big raise.
Instead, 5 players to the flop, and Hansen has hit trip deuces.
Well, great flop for the 4 deuce. Doesn't look like you'll get a lot of action. Everyone else has completely whiffed on this flop. And Gus is going to fire, though.
5,400. Jawanda folds.
Could I do it or not?
Wow. Elezra folds.
Don't really know what Nicky's thinking about. Maybe he's going to make a raise here.
Well, he calls.
Well, he is not calling for value here, Barry. He is looking to bluff this pot on the turn. There's no other reason to call.
And it is a 7 of hearts on the turn.
Jedlicka actually makes a pair. He could get in a bit of trouble. He obviously didn't put Hansen on anything on the flop, so he might think that 7 is good.
And Hansen will bet 14,200.
Well, Gus isn't the check-raise kind of guy, which might get him in a bit of trouble here. If he had known what Jedlicka had, he certainly would have checked here. Jedlicka was trying to make the call on the flop, bluff the turn kind of play.
Well, Gus is going to win this hand, and a nice little pot for the man who's very glad to be back here at the Crown Melbourne. It's a place that brings back very good memories.
Gus Hansen, sometimes when it's going right, it is going right.
Fricky will call.
I thought I had played a really good tournament. I mean, I don't know if I want to use the word deserved to win, but I felt I played very well throughout the tournament.
Gus Hansen leads out with the aces.
All in.
Fricky moves all in.
Call.
Instant call from Gus.
It wasn't over till it was over. I had 2 aces in the last hand, and once I saw the river card, I knew that was it.
And that's it! Gus Hansen is the 2007 Aussie Millions champion.
In the end, a little bit of luck of the cards, and I was the one with all the chips left. It's nice when you go out drinking with the guys and a cute girl comes up to you and asks, "Are you Gus Hansen?" That's definitely an advantage. At the poker table, that's more questionable. Anybody else move all in? I call him 1 second. So sick. It was so sick. My system can't function if I do that too often.
Gus is a fantastic player. Very aggressive, very intelligent person. Great poker intelligence. It's fantastic to see and very entertaining.
Gus, for me, we used to say Gus is very loose. Gus become one of the best no-limit players around.
I think I have a really good chance of repeating here down under in Australia. I might go as far and put myself in the favorite category to win this tournament.
Good player and a very consistent player.
Well, Gus has a lot of confidence, but it's well earned. He really handles big field, no-limit hold'em tournaments about as well as any player in the world.
Action will start with Gus now. 3-4 suited. Chris Ferguson straddling here.
Yeah, we've got Chris joining the festivities. A lot of players straddling at this table tonight.
And Hansen's going to raise it to 6,400 with that 3-4.
Oh, it's certainly a tricky play, hoping to just get called by a player or two and flop a big hand on a low flop.
Jawanda folded. Now Elezra. He's going to call.
Another loose call from Ellie.
Let's gamble.
Well, Antonia says, let's gamble. And I don't know if that's gambling.
Well,
More negative for us.
it looks like he's grabbing for a bunch of 5,000 chips. Makes it 24,000 to go.
You've created a good pot. That's for sure. We've created all.
Well, this ought to end this pot right now. I can't see either Lesra or Hansen calling, or the ace-10 offsuit of Tony G either.
So he will fold it, as does Chris Ferguson. Just contemplating this 3-4.
Well, he certainly can't be thinking about calling. Maybe he could really make a big misstep here and move in. Now he folds.
God, if I have your hand, I call for sure. King, queen, I wanted it. You don't see all this dead money? I got 10 high. Can't call.
Well, that's exactly what Antonius wanted them to think. If Ellie had a pair of eights there, a hand like ace-queen, he might have gotten in big trouble.
116,400, and Ellie anxious to see what the flop would have been, but he may not be too anxious to see who's right around the corner. Phil Ivey. Look who's getting ready. We're coming right back. Welcome back to the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Well, once again, we take a look at our current standings. Ellie Lesra is still at the top of the list, but the rookie, Nikki Jedlicka, stuck 15 grand, and he will not have an opportunity to get it back because Nikki is out. And look who's coming in. Not a bad player, Howard.
Well, Phil Ivey apparently just came back from the golf course.
Hello.
He might have lost a few balls on 18. That's why he wasn't here for the start of the game. He's got 4 of those $25,000 plaques, and I'm sure no one at the table's happy to see Phil. He's a true, tough competitor in the cash games. One of the big winners over the last few years.
Well, John Jawanda has straddled here, and Ellie Lesra will limp in with a deuce-5 suited.
Basically, Ellie has shown us he's going to play any 2 suited cards, or even a semi-strong unsuited hand.
Fold to Tony G.
Yeah, not on the race.
And that Queen 9 offsuit will call.
It certainly seems like this straddling has gotten people to loosen up their starting requirements. Gus looks down at just the kind of hand you actually like in a cash game. Ace-3 suited is the spot where you could flop a flush, really get paid off in a deep stack situation like this one.
Gus did make the call. Now John Jawanda. And Jawanda with a King-Jack suited is going to raise to 8,100. Action back on Lesra.
Well, I'm going to give you action because you with the 16 hand. I know.
Wow, calling a big raise with 2 players behind with just 5 high. And Tony G going to call with Queen 9 offsuit. Wow. Well, Gus Hansen calls. We're going to have 4 to the flop. This is not what Jawanda expected.
And here is the flop, 10-8-6.
Basically, everyone missed. Tony G did flop a gut shot and actually has the best chance to win this pot.
Check from Jawanda.
Tony, it's up to you.
I check. And check around to the turn, a Queen of Hearts.
Wow, this is a very interesting card. Jawanda now has an up and down straight draw and a king high flush draw. Tony G has turned top pair.
Hansen checks.
Jawanda reaching for chips with his big draw.
21.
That's 21,000.
Going to make it 21,000 to go. Lesra folds.
Putting a lot of pressure on Tony G's top pair. Remember, Jawanda raised before the flop. If he isn't bluffing or isn't on a big draw like he has, that Queen 9 is probably no good. But he does make the call.
And Gus folds to the river. 3 of spades. No help to Jawanda.
Well, now Jawanda needs to decide whether to fire another bullet or not. The problem is he had the big draw. So what does he put Tony G on? He checks correctly.
That's a big check.
I don't expect Tony to bet here. He's probably going to show it down and pick up this nice pot.
Tony taking his time.
It's King of Hearts. I check.
And he checks.
No pair.
And Tony G is going to win the hand, and a pretty handsome hand it is. 75,600 Australian dollars. That's just about 68,000 US.
Well, Barry, that's why we see so many of these players calling with marginal hands. If you catch the right cards, you can scoop up a nice-sized pot. Very big relative to your initial investment.
I'm done with straddle over here.
Worked out for me.
Your brilliant idea just cost me, what,
21 plus whatever.
You got one guy steaming. That's nothing.
Well, Lesra says that he's done straddling, and he's straddling.
Bluffing again. Well, certainly Antonius has shown that he's willing to play hands like the 6-5 suited.
Raises to 5,600. Phil Ivey folds.
Again, this is the kind of hand you don't mind picking up the antes, but if you just get called, people aren't going to put you on the 6-high.
And Kagawa will call.
But if I put him on the hand, then that's why I didn't value bet. If I could put him on 2 jacks, yeah, I wouldn't lose.
Tony G still looking back on past glories. He'll fold this hand.
Then I would have value bet. I would have value bet.
And Ferguson and Hansen both fold as well.
Jawanda folding around to Ellie. He looks at A3 suited. He's played every suited hand.
And he'll call this hand.
Apparently Ellie thinks he's playing blackjack. As is Antonius, but they're up against the big blackjack.
Ace, 9, 8, 2 clubs. Everybody got a little piece.
Well, a lesser with only bottom pair, but we've got top pair with a good kicker against a straight and a flush draw. We could see a big pot here.
And Kagawa's going to make it 14,000 to go. Lesra folds.
One would expect Antonius to try and semi-bluff here with a solid raise. He has Kagawa covered.
And he raises to 90,000.
Well, he's essentially moving all in here. If Kagawa calls, he's committing all his chips.
Well,
he didn't realize that Antonius' bet had committed him all in. Well, he does now.
Well, Kagawa with the small advantage, but essentially we're flipping coins here for nearly 200,000 Australian dollars.
And an 8 of diamonds on the turn.
No help to Antonius. He needs a 7 or a club, or he's going to lose the biggest pot of the night.
Would have made trips for a Lesra had he not folded.
You know I don't play this.
And it is a 7 he catches.
I have a straight.
Antonius hits the inside straight. Of course, he had a flush draw as well, but he's going to win the biggest pot of the night. He has Kagawa covered, which will bust him. And we'll see the difference here between tournaments and cash game. Kagawa would be on the rail here in a tournament, but he's going to have the option to rebuy if he chooses.
182,600 Australian dollars in that pot.
Yeah, you can't win if you don't gamble. You gotta take risks.
By the way, buddy, you win all my money too if I see the turn.
Well, Patrick took in $93,000 in profit on that hand. A lot to smile about. Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Well, this quick break in the action gives our very own Rebecca Harlow a chance to take us inside the beautiful Crown Melbourne.
When you think of the Crown, you think decadent, glamorous, opulent, with a premier poker tournament and everything from live entertainment to fine dining and extraordinary shopping. The Crown truly provides a world of entertainment.
First things first, if you love to gamble, this is the place for you. With over 300 table games and 2,500 slots, there is unparalleled excitement for every level of player.
Crown is Australia's premier gaming venue. We pride ourselves on the offerings that we have for all levels of gamblers, but in particular our high rollers.
There's so many nice restaurants to go to, and it's just a real pleasure to be down here.
With over 24 restaurants here at the Crown, you will never go hungry. The world-famous Nobu is the newest addition.
What a wonderful experience to eat at Nobu. My favourite restaurant was definitely Silk's, and then Nobu opened up. So now I have 2 favourites.
And if you are looking to just plain relax, you can indulge in Crown Spa, which offers a terrific selection of health and beauty treatments, an indoor swimming pool, a high-tech gym, and 2 championship tennis courts.
Our mission is to give our guests the most fantastic experience possible.
They actually make me feel like, wow, Mike, thank you for coming here. It means a lot to us. And you feel it.
Well, it really is quite a fabulous place.
It's probably my favorite destination on the poker circuit, period. It's a long trip, but it's well worth it.
first four.
Action at the table continuing. Phil Ivey will fold. Masa Kagawa with a king 10 suited.
And as you can see, Masa has rebought for 100,000, and he's going to open the action for 6,000.
How much? 5,000?
Tony G asks how much?
A small pair. This is the spot where he feels like if he can catch a good flop here, he might bust a steaming Kagawa who's just lost 100,000.
And he does call. And Alezra.
Well, he's certainly not going to let a fine hand like ace-8 suited to get away. Now, here's one of these situations. If it comes hearts, Alezra's just simply going to bust Kagawa.
10-9-6, a couple of spades. Ellie checks.
Well, Kagawa's flopped top pair. Tony G missed and would expect Masa to bet here and pick this pot up.
That's 14,000.
He will bet 14,000. Tony G will throw it away.
Not quite sure what Alezra's thinking about. He's only flopped a gut shot. He's going to call here. Maybe he thinks his ace is good. An ace or a 7 actually would give him the best hand.
To the turn, an ace of diamonds. And Alezra has paired his ace.
And this is the problem with Alezra's hand. Either the ace or the 7 is probably going to kill the action. One would expect Masa to slow down with this ace on the board. Wow, he fires 25,000 into this pot. And Alezra certainly didn't call on the flop to be folding now that he's made his hand. Eli thinking about whether to call or raise here. Well, he's got the call in his hand. He's got a lot to think about here. Is he going to get action from a hand that he has beat if he raises? Not very likely. He just calls.
And a king of diamonds on the river, and Kagawa has caught 2 pair.
He had 5 outs, and he got one of those 5.
Check from Alezra.
Well, certainly we would expect Kagawa to continue firing here on the river.
Holding.
And he moves all in.
Wow, Alezra's in a tough spot. Again, he called on the flop. He caught his top pair. He actually had the best hand on the turn. Now he gets drawn out on. He's getting a decent price here. He knows that Kagawa just lost 100,000. Could be steaming. This is a tough spot. And he's going to call. What a turnaround. Kagawa lost the biggest pot of the night, and now, one hand later, he wins the biggest pot of the night.
208,600 Australian dollars. That's about 180,000 US dollars, and our early leader is feeling the pain of a big loss. We'll see if he can bounce back. Next.
Mom? Dad? Okay, I know I've been with Charles for 6 months now, and I know you're probably wondering why I haven't brought him home to meet you. Okay, here's the thing. I'm ashamed of him.
Good at bluffing? Play poker online at partypoker.com. It's fun, it's easy, it's the world's largest poker room.
This is the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Barry Tompkins, Howard Lederer alongside here in Melbourne. Bill Ivey straddling this hand. First action is on Kagawa. He folds. Now Tony G with a 6-deuce offsuit. And he calls.
I really have no explanation for that play. He's up front, and he's just limping in with a very weak hand.
Action folding around to John Jawanda. 6-5. And Jawanda will call.
And Alezra has a 6 as well, and he limps in.
Antonius, Jack 10 suited. He'll call. Now Phil Ivey with a king-queen suited.
Well, looks down at a big hand against these guys. And he's grabbing for some chips here.
Bumps it up to 8,600. Tony G folds, and Jawanda likewise.
And Alezra calls.
What are the chances I wouldn't call after I lost the last hand? That's what I play here.
Antonius also calls, so 3 players to the flop.
Well, Lesr's comment says it all. He's low on chips and low on patience.
And the flop, 10-9-8.
Well, it looks like everyone has caught this flop, but Antonius has it well covered. Actually, he only loses to Ivy's king or a jack, or a Lesra's 9 or a 6. And it goes check, check to Ivy. Is he going to bet on the gut shot and the 2 overcards?
And he checks. The turn is a deuce of spades.
Wow, that's an interesting card. Antonius and Ivy both have flush draws, but Patrick has top pair and a straight draw.
But action starts on Ellie.
Yes, I'm all in.
And Lesra moves all in for $32,500.
Wow, Lesra getting his short stack in the pot. I can't believe that Patrick can get away from this hand. He has top pair, a straight draw, and a flush draw. It's just a question of whether he's going to raise or not.
Now remember, Phil Ivey also has a flush draw and a gut shot straight draw. And Antonius is going to call.
Well, I can't see Ivy laying this down. It looks like he has a huge draw. He actually is missing a lot of outs. Antonius has him covered, but he's 31% here. He's getting 3-1 to call. I'd expect him to just call here, actually.
Ivy will need any spade or a jack.
Or a king to make the best hand.
Lesra needing either a 6 or a 9, but it can't be a spade. And Ivy does make the call.
We've got a $127,000 pot, and 1 pair is the best hand with 1 to come.
So we come to the river. 3 players. Endless possibilities here. It's a 5 of clubs.
It's a complete blank. Our table leader so far continues with his good run. It goes check, check, and Patrick picks up a big pot here.
Patrick Antonius with $127,300 in that pot.
Big turn.
Wow.
Well, the chips have been flying tonight. Eli Lesra got off to a great start, but now he's down $100,000. Masakagawa got off to a bad start, but he's gotten even. Well, our big winner tonight, Patrick Antonius, started off well, and his chips just keep growing.
Well, the bad news for Eli Lesra is the good news for Patrick Antonius. He sits atop the heap at $166,800 Australian dollars. 4 players in the black, 4 players in the red.